Peak Human.
Les humains à leur meilleur.
C'est tu apogeo.
Peak 人間
Peak Recipes.
Hello, friends. Hope everyone is faring well in these challenging times. Hopefully this episode lightens the mood and lifts people's spirits a bit. My guest today is JP Sears, who's a super funny guy and a popular comedian touring the world, but is also focused on health, fitness, and creating a better planet. He is a YouTuber, comedian, emotional healing coach, author, speaker, world traveler, and curious student of life. His work empowers people to live more meaningful lives. JP is also the author of How to Be Ultra Spiritual. He encourages healing and growth through his humorous and entertaining informative videos, including his hit Ultra Spiritual comedy series, which has accumulated over 300 million views. He makes great videos on IGTV, making fun of vegans, keto people, and everyone in between. He's on Instagram at awakenwithjp. I know a lot of people have been waiting for Nose to Tail meat to be available. You can check nosetotale.org now, and we have some more stuff in stock. We'll be getting even more on Friday, so check over the weekend and we'll ship it out to you on Monday. It's a great way to get the most healthy and sustainable grass-finished and humanely raised meats to your family without having to brave the grocery stores. Since this is a community-powered show, I'd like to invite people to continue to support it on Patreon at patreon.com/peakhuman. This is the only way this podcast can continue to exist. I really want to thank the few and the proud that support it currently. Please don't let them do all the heavy lifting. If you find value in the show, please add a few bucks in there on Patreon. Other than that, just please continue to share it and review it on iTunes or the podcast app. That really helps the visibility of the show in the charts and takes only a few seconds. I'll do a hard sell, I guess, for once. You can pause right now and hit the 5 stars button, and then we can all feel good about ourselves. Done? Okay, thanks. Let's continue with the good vibes with my new pal, JP Sears. All right, JP, we've begun. We have no plan.
Yes, I like the plan of spontaneity. I think it's always the best plan of all. And it's going good. Glad to be here with you, brother.
Awesome. How's Austin?
Yeah, probably. Not that I really see, though. It's just out taking actually 2 walks today. And there's families out, like riding bikes, and kids are out. And I know there's concern and everybody's got their stuff they're dealing with. And some people are more affected than others, but we're all affected. Yet it's also a great freaking reality check to see people smiling and finding the opportunity in what's a situation beyond anyone's control. So yeah, in downtown Austin, I have a friend that was just in downtown yesterday. They said like people are out walking on the trails, paddleboarding on the river. So we're still alive.
That's great. Yeah, I appreciate that. I was just in Denver and it was pretty crazy. People were trying to get the hell out of there. The airport was insane, but people are nicer. They kind of appreciate other humans.
Yeah, I think that's nice. I think adversity, it doesn't really change us. It just reveals what we have inside. And yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to reveal like our kindness, because I think it's easy to be kind when it's easy to be kind. Yet when it's challenging and we're tempted to only think about ourselves, that's maybe when our kindness matters the most. And maybe that's even when we're able to grow into a better version of ourselves.
I love that. You are ultra spiritual. We got to introduce people to you. You're not just a comedian, but you have sort of this history of helping people with emotional things. And why don't you tell us how you started?
Yeah, man. Well, I started off as a wounded person, and probably still am in many regards. But, being a person who is emotionally wounded, like everybody is, by the way, in my very early 20s, late teens, it led me to pursue my own path of self-growth, because it's like I knew there was something more than just the achieve money and status kind of thing. I didn't know what the hell that more was, what else was out there, but I started searching and I got to connect with powerful mentors who I just learned everything I could from, did my own personal work. And that quickly got me interested in helping other people as a profession. And originally that started off helping people as an exercise coach, nutrition coach, and that quickly faded into what became my real passion, which was helping people with emotional healing. And, under the coaching umbrella. So it's not like, oh, let me do my hands and I'm healing you like Jesus. It's like, no, I'm helping people help themselves do their healing, get in touch with their own pains that need to be resolved and guiding them with techniques. So yeah, man, I did that for about 13 years before I even did my first comedy video. And along that way, doing I'd call that life coaching. I had the chance to work with thousands of clients and teach workshops and retreats around the world. And while I was doing that, it was giving me a beautiful, exquisite education into the heart and soul of people. And of course, I'm doing my own work along the way. So yeah, I got to learn a lot about what helps us, what harms us, and how we tie our own shoes together and what we can do to give ourselves a better life that's on our terms and, oriented around our own purpose.
I love that. When I first found you, I thought this conscious comedy or Awaken with JP, I thought that was kind of like just a gimmick and that you were just all comedy. But then I realized this is what you really believe in and this is your life passion. And when we talked last week about some film stuff, you wanted to give this message of abundance and of positivity and you didn't want to be a part of something that was negative or making fun of people.
You shared from our conversation last week, and I'll restate it here. I don't like to do comedy on topics, material that I don't like, or I don't respect, or I see flaws, or, I don't think the world needs any more condescending judgment. But a lot of us might think of like, oh, when you're doing comedy, you're making fun of something you don't like. That's a way to use comedy to hurt. That's like a bully archetype use of comedy. Yet I like to use comedy in topics, material realms, health, nutrition, spirituality, self-growth, those realms that I really respect, that are super important to me. And I personally think if we can learn to laugh at what's most important to us, we're giving ourselves a great service. And one of the things there is to laugh about in the things that are most important to us is our own egotistical nature within those realms. Mm-hmm. So, for example, maybe some of the listeners have put out a video out a few years ago called How to Become Gluten Intolerant. And that's because I've been gluten intolerant, gluten-free for 18, 19 years at this point. And I started to notice, man, my ego is getting out of hand with gluten intolerance. Like I realized going to visit my parents and making these self-righteous demands and like kind of passive aggressively shaming my parents for still eating gluten and like, oh, that's not organic, you heathens. I started to realize like, oh, there's a big difference between being gluten-free and being an asshole. And I was being an asshole. So that was my own egotistical nature, trying to get a sense of significance through being gluten-free. So I love the idea of like, let me shine the light of awareness on my own egotistical nature within different nutrition realms, fitness realms, health realms, spirituality realms, because I really respect these realms. And I personally believe me and everybody else who cares to open their mind to it, we can get more support in these realms, can support our lives better if we learn to recognize how we're being egotistical as well in these realms. Because once we take away the ego's hiding spot, it controls us less. Like once we realize how we're being pretentious and self-righteous about our meditation practice, then we've freed ourselves of that egotistical bear trap. It gratifies our ego, yet actually holds us back from growing even more from meditation in this case.
I think that's so important. Yeah. I mean, this diet world, this health world, and people build their identity around it. It's a religious
war, isn't it? I mean, you know better than me.
Yeah. But it's so important some of that is driven by ego. I guess I deal with vegans a lot, and it seems like they think they're more self-righteous than us because they choose to not eat meat. You live with a vegan. Your wife is vegan. Is she still vegan?
I do. Yeah, she's still vegan, and I eat a strict vegan diet myself and a meat eating diet simultaneously. Equal diet opportunity employer. So, yeah, man. To me, it's almost like I think it is like it. We live in a beautiful time, 2020, where the idea of excluding people because of race or religion, like we laugh at that. And we look at like back in the 1950s when people would do that and just say like, how did people ever live like that? How could people be so like intolerant and even ignorant and not include other people who are different? Well, for me, an eating philosophy that's religiousized, it's the same thing. So me and my wife have got a beautiful relationship about food where it's based on acceptance. It's just like, I've got neighbor who's of Indian heritage is like, cool, like different skin, we accept each other anyway. So with my wife and I, it's like we've got different food religions. I'm kind of like a food atheist. I'm not like religious. I just want to eat in a way that makes me feel great. We accept each other, even though how we practice doesn't agree with each other. I think people start to get combative. And I mean, all about, of course, there's emotional violence in the food world. We start to get emotionally violent in the food world when we come from a low place of believing you are only acceptable if our philosophies and practices agree with each other. Here's what we don't understand. If we only let people into our lives who agreed with us about everything, and everybody in the world agreed with us about everything, the world would be the most boring place imaginable. I think we grow from diversification. We grow from being exposed to ways other people do things and letting those be okay, even though it's not our way. And as we learn about their ways, it doesn't mean we have to subscribe to them, but if we can have an open mind and consider that rather than just automatically rejecting it because we're coming from a fear-based consciousness where we fear things that are different than us because they don't validate us and how we are and also who we think we are, because a lot of people start to become very self-identified with their eating practice. And that's when they become willing to die for the cause. It's like, I will uphold veganism, paleoism, ketoism, whatever ism, even at my own expense, because we hallucinate, I am the vegan, I am the paleo. But it's like, no, you're not. You're something far greater than that. Yeah, but that's a way that you eat. So, yeah, in other words, me and my beautiful wife do our best not to practice emotional violence, but rather emotional acceptance and connection around food.
That seems hard at times, but it's great. I don't know how we'd learn if we don't accept other people's opinions. And I try to do that almost to a fault where people get mad at me for having people who they don't agree with on my podcast. And, someone talking, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to learn if I don't have these people on. And I love to watch vegan videos and see how they think. And it helps me think more about my views, right?
Yeah.
It's keep me on my toes, but also be open and be like, oh, that's a good point. Or, oh, no, that's not a good point. They're twisting things and it strengthens my argument.
Of course. And I believe you be dialed in about some things, but have the humbleness to realize you two are full of shit. So of course they are. So we can always find what we're looking for. And I don't think we want to buy into anybody's philosophy, hook, line, and sinker, because they too are a human being with a butthole, which means they're going to be full of it a lot of the time.
Yeah. How do you even do it logistically, though? Just eating meals together? And
I sneak raw hamburger into all of her smoothies. Just so she's not a vegan anymore. We're relatively independent. It's kind of like if we were different religions, we'd probably go to a different church on Sundays. She tends to do more food prep, and I'll fend for myself. Sometimes the things she makes, I'll eat, and it's kind of like as an appetizer for me. But I tend to need more of the animal-based proteins to feel satiated and good. So I'll make those on my own, and I'm totally good. She doesn't want to cook meat, and I'm like, great. Thank you for choosing. I'll do it. And I don't want to make fucking quinoa either. So you do that.
Well, vegan food, it's a good base for meat. you know? Like you said, you do both. It's like,
good
yeah, it's
carrier.
perfect.
And it's also a good base for butter as well. I tend to, like 1 part quinoa, 2 parts butter.
Yeah. What do you describe your diet as? Like paleo? Like
paleo would probably be a pretty accurate term for it. It's, I guess I would call it moderate amounts of meat. I've experimented with like huge amounts of meat thinking like, dude, I'll be a more alpha male. It's like, oh, but I actually function worse if I overdo it. But yeah, so moderate amounts of meat, pretty high fat and quite low on carbohydrates. I find I need some, but it's pretty low in comparison.
Yeah, well, it's funny because we had you at the keto conference, did an awesome job doing the performance there, and it was Dom D'Agostino's conference, and I stole his seat to talk to you and got kicked out by the security guard. The security tapped me on my shoulder, like, this is Dom's seat. But
it's like he's the godfather of keto, so you wouldn't go into like the Italy and take like the godfather of the mafia seat.
I tried. It didn't work. It backfired. But no, it's funny. So yeah, I know you're not keto, and I love that you make fun of keto people. You make fun of anyone, right? You had a video of just
including myself.
Yeah, making the video about just keto recipes. What was that? They're just all based on butter.
I've got a mini series within my YouTube channel. It's a cooking show called Cooking with a Narcissist. So I did an episode on keto mastery cooking, and they were all basically pure fat recipes, blending up a full pound of butter with coconut oil and avocado, and there's your keto fat shaming smoothie. And a part of the hypothesis of the video, and it hasn't been scientifically disproven yet, so it might be true, but part of the hypothesis is that going into ketosis, fat shames fat right off your body. So teach about that in the video, which I think is really changing the paradigm of nutrition.
I think Dom said he was working on a paper on that. Yeah.
He's usually 3-4 steps behind me.
You're the leader, man. Game changers. We talked about game changers. I heard you talking about game changers and What the Health on one of your podcasts.
Yeah.
What'd you think of What the Health?
I didn't think highly of it. And disclaimer, this is coming from a guy who, I've got an open mind, and I truly believe some people can thrive really well eating vegan for a period of time, whatever that period of time is for them. And by no means do I think all vegan for all people is right. I don't think any diet is like, here, this is for everyone. It's like, dude, now it's like a Hitler mentality of diets. Mm-hmm. So anyway, coming from a guy, I love to have an open mind about everything. Yeah, man, I thought it was a misleading documentary. So like emotionally, like to me, there was like this weird condescending emotional energy behind it, where the guy who put out a documentary before called, I think, Forks Over Cowspiracy. So he's a known vegan, known meat basher. So there in the documentary, he's pretending like he doesn't know if being a vegan is better. And I just thought like that lack of transparency was a really untrustworthy foundation. And then the other thing that I thought was like, man, I think this thing might be doing more harm than good is, in an effort to make meat look bad, they made sugar look unbad. Just like, oh, like what's the disease? Cancer, diabetes? Like, it's not sugar. It's only meat. And to me, that's like, cool. If you've got evidence meat causes something, let's see the evidence, but let's not fabricate it and pretend that sugar isn't evil just because you want to make meat look more evil. P.S. I don't advocate conventionally farmed meat. Mm-hmm. I don't advocate conventionally farmed vegetables. Mm-hmm. Those documentaries, they pretend like sustainable, grass-fed, restorative animal agriculture doesn't exist. And they pretend like it doesn't exist because it's more convenient for them to sell their dogma like a virus. I'm not a fan of someone advocating a certain eating philosophy at the expense of a greater truth. And I was not a fan of that dude's, what the health and his conspiracy. Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, yeah. So a lot of things. I watched a whole documentary on soil health, and they didn't talk about regenerative agriculture. It's just so bogus that they can ignore the best way to generate good soil and heal the environment. What the Health is why I got into this, actually. I watched it 2.5 years ago and changed my whole life around because of that film, and decided I was going to make this documentary, and have quit my job and have done it ever since. So What the Health was a very big turning point in my life.
Man, I guess so.
And then another point, I love the sugar point of my biggest problem with vegans is not that they're vegan. It's exactly what you're talking about, is that they ignore half of the evidence. And even keto people. So I'm trying not to be in this keto crazy world or carnivore crazy world where they're just like, this is the only way. Like, you got to have a steak for breakfast or you're a total bozo, bro. That's what's kind of happening, because they're pushing back from the vegan side. But then they're also ignoring that people can be healthy eating vegetables. You know what I mean? Or there's populations that have very high plant diets and can do fine. So I'm kind of trying to make this film, or kind of be the person to help all sides to get along and show people that it's not the meat and it's not the sugar. It's a combination of meat and sugar, or it's a very complicated thing. It's not, you can't just ignore one side. But my thing to vegans is, you're only looking at one side. At least our side is looking at all sides.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we can look at plant-based diets and we can look at meat-based diets, but they're ignoring half of it.
100%. There's a beautiful quote by a man named Upton Sinclair. I'll probably slightly butcher the quote, but here it is to the best of my ability to regurgitate it. It's very hard to convince someone of something when their livelihood depends on them not understanding that something. So with that said, whether one's livelihood is their job or their livelihood is their identification with a certain eating philosophy, it's very hard to get someone to understand something when their sense of livelihood depends on them not understanding that thing. So people know how to make themselves super dumb so they can't comprehend restorative agriculture, so it won't even entertain it. So we all have the wisdom of Upton Sinclair, how that can work against us if we're willing to sacrifice our open mind for the sake of trying to validate our dogma, which is just a belief that we hold that we believe. And then when we believe a belief, we actually hallucinate that it's absolutely true. No other possibilities. So, Buddha allegedly advocated to question everything. And I think that means have a curious mind. I think we're in great shape when we want to know what we don't know, and very limited shape, and we will never learn if we don't want to know what we don't know, if we're only willing to reaffirm what we already know. And part of how we do that is we pretend what we already know is the truth, because that justifies us not learning anything that we currently don't know. So, man, to me, it comes down to, a fear-based mentality, having a sense of certainty, even if that certainty is built out of delusion, just believing a belief. That sense of certainty makes us feel safe. But when we feel uncertain, i.e. we're curious, what don't I know? Here's what I thought I knew, but what else is out there? And maybe what I'm doing isn't wrong, but maybe there's something better for me. That uncertainty creates feelings. We go into a mystery, the unknown, and that evokes a certain level of fear. And you've got to be a fierce warrior of life to be willing to journey into the curiosity of learning what you don't know, because you'll have a sense of fear. That's human nature. And it's courageous to go into the realm where we feel fear. Courage, as so many people have said, courage isn't the absence of fear, but it is action in the face of fear. But when we're not willing to be the fierce warrior of life who's courageous enough to be curious, then we're just looking to feel certain so we can feel safe, so we don't have to feel afraid. And you don't have to extrapolate it too far to realize that's going to really encapsulate our growth, our learning, and really limit us, in my delusional opinion.
I love that. To be a good scientist, you have to realize that the more you know, the less you know. Like, I love the good scientists. They don't speak in certainties. Yeah. They always admit that they don't know something. And again, I don't want to always talk about vegans, but they just aren't good scientists in that regard, where they don't question things and they don't always want to learn. They almost back into science. It's another thing people do is they prefer something and they make up their mind and then they try to back into the science to support that. And I'm trying to do that.
That wouldn't be confirmation bias, would it?
No, I mean, this whole meat thing is just, I've always loved to eat meat. So maybe I'm backing into why it's healthy. But if you just look at evolution, we know that it's healthy.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's open-minded of you to be able to consider, like, yeah, maybe I'm backing into it because I'm biased. And yeah, and by the way, like, it'd be inhuman and maybe impossible for someone to live their whole life not doing a version of that. And I love how you point out, Brian, like, great scientists are curious and they don't really speak in certainties. And I love listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson for that reason. First off, makes me feel super dumb. So I feel insecure. But, listening to interviews with them, he's slippery in a way. It's like, listening to him on Joe Rogan's podcast, Joe will ask him a question and you don't get here's the answer very often, but rather he asks a question and, like, holy hell, Neil just opened up a new realm. You went into the realm of what we don't know that is triggered by that question. So it evokes more curiosity, not certainty, but man, the mind expands listening to that dude, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Speaking of mind expansion, so I went to Peru recently, semi-recently. I know you went to Peru. I have a business partner, Dr. Gary, that's talking about this mind expansion stuff. And I want you to talk about your experience there and maybe plant medicine. I don't know if you actually did it or not. You said that you were deciding to do it. You were going to decide to do it or not. But there's this idea that we take drugs to suppress emotions, right? So it's like we have this idea in society that how we're going to deal with emotional problems is to take these pills that will suppress your feelings and so you don't have to deal with them. Or there's this other realm, which I have not really dived into, but I'm curious about, is a plant medicine realm where you're almost forced to deal with the issues instead of suppressing them. It's the open, like Joe Rogan talks about it. When he smokes weed or does edibles, it forces him to confront his insecurities and confront the problems and deal with them. And it's hard, but it's a learning experience. So why don't you take it away?
Yeah, brother. Well, first off, I have the philosophy that seems to serve me very well, and it seems to serve a lot of people who excel in doing what they're doing. And the philosophy is doing hard things that make you uncomfortable is really good for you. It makes you grow and expand. Now, at first glance, we think, oh, if something's uncomfortable, then it's bad for me. Well, that's our self-preservation instinct talking. But our self-realization instinct knows if something's uncomfortable, it's probably pretty damn good for us. You think of, like, I do stand-up comedy. First time I got on stage, 0 to 10, how much discomfort do you think I had?
11? I don't know.
It's about a 12. Yeah. But if I was avoiding the discomfort, I wouldn't have ever gotten on stage, or at most I would get on stage once and say, never again. That was a hot stove, not touching that again. But the willingness to face the discomfort over and over and over again allowed me to develop into the stand-up comedian I am, where I get to tour the country doing sold-out live stand-up comedy shows. And I would dare to say that helps me reach a lot of people. I would dare to say that discomfort created so much benefit for me. We all know, like, exercise is another classic example. where those who exercise, like, what are they doing? They're making themselves pretty damn uncomfortable. They're filled with lactic acid. They're literally breaking muscle tissue down. Nothing freaking comfortable about that. Yet we know that discomfort creates growth. It makes them fitter. And it's literally what makes their muscles grow. But he or she who looks to avoid discomfort, man, they're robbing themselves of so much opportunity. They become what astronauts' bones in outer space become, where astronauts, they don't even have the stress of gravity, the discomfort of gravity to keep their bones strong, so they disintegrate. And that's what people's psychologies and bodies can do when we live with this fear-based mindset that vilifies discomfort. But the cheat code that truly successful people have, I'm not just talking about people with a freaking Ferrari on their Instagram. I don't even know if they're successful. They're probably shallow if that's what they're doing. I'm talking about successful people who are fulfilled, helping other people, contributing to a better world, living their purpose. Those people know the cheat code. Doing the thing that makes me uncomfortable is great for me. And so it is with our emotions. When we vilify them with pills and escape mechanisms, even just disassociation, man, how much are we robbing ourselves of growth potential? So we diminish ourselves trying to escape ourselves because our emotions are within ourselves. So to your beautiful question, as I've just barfed my dogma on all of you, keep in mind, I have a butthole, I'm full of shit, but that's my opinion. With plant medicines, I think they're freaking powerful. Are they for everybody all the time? Nope, I don't think anything is. Yet they're very powerful. They're wonderful tools for us to have in the toolbox. And speaking from my experience, there's 3 different ayahuasca experiences I've had. One of them, I would say, was life-changing. The other 2 were cool, not life-changing. One of them was very life-changing. I cried more in that ceremony in the next couple of days than I had in 10 years. And if we weren't careful, you'd say like, oh my God, JP, like it hurt you. You were crying. Like, no, those were tears of relief. Those were tears that were constipated, that were needing to be cried out for a decade or couple decades. So for me, it was incredibly transformative. And I don't know how many years of kind of normal self-growth work that saved me, that accelerated me. I don't know. I could only take an inaccurate guess. I think those plants are there as powerful tools. And let me share this with you, Brian, just because I want to be extra long-winded, just dominate this conversation so I can feel in control. Like anything, plant medicines can be taken out of balance. I know plenty of people over the past decade and a half that have unraveled their lives in a negative way because of an addiction to plant medicines. They'll be the first to tell you, like any addict is form of denial. Well, ayahuasca's not addictive. Marijuana's not addictive, man. Mushrooms aren't addictive. There's no chemical properties in them that are addictive. Yeah, same with gambling, but people get fucking addicted to it all the time. So people can actually start to use their altered conscious experiences as escape mechanisms rather than entry mechanisms into themselves. My wife, who's done a crap load of work with ayahuasca, and I think she has a beautiful, healthy, empowering perspective on it. She'll look at an ayahuasca ceremony as intense and profound and challenging and rewarding as it can be. But she'll look at that ceremony, that experience, that's just the beginning. The real work is then integrating what you learn into your everyday life. But the people who start to use plant medicines in a habitual addictive way that actually damages their life, they're relying on them like a crutch. You walk with a crutch when you don't need it. It doesn't strengthen your legs, it weakens your legs. So instead of integrating their new emotional sensitivity and their lessons into their everyday life, they are running from their everyday life back into an altered state of consciousness the next weekend. So I just like to know where the guardrails are on the road so we don't slam into them. Because I see, the past decade and a half, plant medicines have become way more known and way more used than they used to. And I'm glad people are knowing about them. And I also want people to know about the shadow side of them, because when we pretend there's not a shadow side, we're probably in the shadow side.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's kind of about the intent. Well, it's about the intent of the experience, and it's also about the moderation. I don't like the word moderation, but there's a difference between having some wine on the weekend and people who use it as a crutch and then they drink it all the time. How do you find that balance though? Or like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think I have all the answers. I will, a great reference. My wife recorded a whole hour-long podcast about it on her podcast, which is called Soul Powered with Sears. It's on all platforms. It's a great resource. Speaking to what feeble little help I can offer, you need the right guidance. So a legitimate shaman who's trained in the lineages and traditions of ayahuasca is speaking about that specifically. And they'll be wise people where, like, if you show up every freaking weekend, they'll be like, bro, what are you running from? Like, you're not here to do the work. You're here escaping the work. Yet we have what I like to term Craigslist shamans, especially in the US, where they're not qualified. They don't know what they're doing, both at a physical level and a spiritual level and an emotional level, but rather there's someone who has a substance. So they become a convenient hookup. They put on spiritual music, light candles, and serve up some ayahuasca. Now, like, who's a good shaman and who's not? Like, there's no certifying credentialed body. So it's easier said than done, but be careful of the convenience shamanism, because they might call themselves a shaman. It's like, unlike a doctor, like anybody can call themselves a shaman, but if you call yourself a doctor, there's legal ramifications for you misleading people. And some of these people are innocently ignorant. They're not out there trying to be malicious and hurt people and mislead people, but they just truly don't know. It's just like if a child gets behind the wheel in the car, they think, there's a game. They don't know there's disastrous ramifications because they don't know what they don't know. And you read any really wise literature about plant medicines and psychedelics, and they'll tell you there's 3 important considerations: the substance, the set, and the setting. The set is your psychology, your intention. Like, what are you really here for? Why are you doing this? Escape yourself, help yourself. Like, what's your intention? And then the setting is the environment around you, including people and including a guide. So you can have inherently a good substance, say it's well-brewed ayahuasca, and you can have an absolutely terrible experience of it because the set and setting is not right. Or maybe your set's right, your intentions are great, but the setting is not right, and you wouldn't know any difference. So I can't recommend like having a good reputable shaman. And so oftentimes that means your word of mouth, like you were just in Peru. So when dear friends of mine say, like, dude, JP, I'm getting a heart call to have an ayahuasca experience, where do I go? It's usually not down the road. It's usually like, okay, you're going to Peru, you're going to Costa Rica. And I think that's actually a great filter system, to be honest with you.
Well, who's going to actually, it's like put up or shut up. Like, you're going to go all the way out there. You're going to be ready.
Yeah.
So you're kind of in this paleo world, I guess. It's kind of rejecting modern society. So a lot of this stuff we're talking about seems to be kind of just going against how we live our lives today. What else do you think were the important things people can be doing to kind of go back? I mean, I don't know. Did you believe in like going back to our roots kind of thing? I'm not saying we need to live in a cave, but what's your thoughts on just dealing with modern society?
Yeah, I want to go back, but go forward too. In other words, with modern society, all the new technologies and things, you could be an idiot and know, like, some of this is harmful. Of course, going back to the roots, getting in touch with nature, there's so much benefit and enhancement we can do in so many different techniques and strategies there. I'm a big fan. And I'm also a fan of going forward with technology that will serve me. So when I look at new technologies or ways of living, a couple of questions I ask is, one, does it serve me? And two, does it leave me more connected or disconnected from myself and the people that matter most to me, as well as my purpose? So wherever my phone is, I'm glad I don't have it right here. Yeah. But like, you look at a phone and say like, well, a lot of us use it in a way that it disconnects us more. It disconnects us more from ourselves. We sit at it. We're in an altered state. We're just looking for a dopamine hit, but we're not connecting in a meaningful way to ourselves, the people that matter to us, or our purpose. Though you can pick up your phone and do just that. It's not how people are usually doing it 4 hours every day. Mm-hmm. So, but right now we're to state the obvious, we're in a time of accelerated technology, innovation. And people who innovating technology is what they do. I don't want to leave it up to them to decide what's good for me. Just because technology is innovative for the sake of innovating technology doesn't mean that's going to make my life better. So I think we can all use wise discernment. Like, will that make my life better or not? Like virtual reality, like, no, like this reality is freaking awesome. I need to be more connected into this reality. So good for you for inventing these amazing virtual reality goggles. It looks just like real life. Well, so does real life. So I'll discern like, yeah, that's impressive technology, and someone's inner genius went into that, and that ain't going to make my life better. So that's a no for me. Like the internet, like, yeah, I want that. I can reach a lot of people with like a message and make them laugh. So that's going to be a yes for me.
Yeah. Again, it's the balance. So yeah, like getting outside and going into nature. And are you a meditating person?
Yeah, I've been meditating for 7 years straight, Brian. Right now I'm doing what I call a podcast meditation. I do, I'm not like the world's most competitive meditator. Lately I've been doing 2 meditation sessions a day, just 5 minutes each, because that's what
in your world.
100%.
I'm still not there. It's like everyone talks about it. I think it feels like it's like quinoa or kale. Everyone's like, oh yeah, quinoa, kale. Oh yeah. Of course. Meditation. I'm like, okay, yeah. And then I just never do it. It's like, I don't know. Maybe I should. I need to be more spiritual. Well, that's so I kind of wanted to have you on is talk about this other kind of spiritual side. How important is comedy in all this?
Well, I'm biased, like I'm a comedian. So of course I'm going to say, yeah, comedy is super important. It's like saying to a vegan, hey, how important are vegetables? So biased answer coming at you. I personally think comedy's, first off, it's super important for my life purpose. I also think it's important for other people. We all have a sense of humor. It's an innate sense we all have. And humor is a language of connection. And you can see someone on the other side of the world in China, you don't speak the language, but you see them laughing. Like, okay, we speak that language. We understand it's something we all have in common. And if I didn't know any better, we have a sense of humor because it's supposed to be used, both in a way of other people amusing us and making us laugh, as well as a proactive way of us using our sense of humor through playfulness to make other people laugh and amuse ourselves while we're being proactive with our humor. And I look at humor as an alchemist. We have our stress, our emotional baggage, our suffering. And when we can laugh about it in a respectful way, I believe humor becomes an alchemist that helps transform our pain. I truly do believe that because we have an emotional expression when we're laughing. So laughter is. Crying is another form of emotional expression. But we realize we're expressing something. We're shitting something out when we're laughing. So for me, that's important. Just like circulating blood through exercise, super important. We know our lymphatic fluid needs to be circulated. We know the food through us needs to be circulated or we're constipated. I think our emotional energy, same thing. And laughter is a powerful way to do that. For me, it's a way that I keep my sanity. It's a way that I become more self-aware. personally. And I will say this, Brian, on the note of comedy, but I'm going to broaden it to say creativity. Comedy is just, it's one genre within the ballpark of creativity. So with creativity, you have filmmaking, music, art, writing, dancing, movement. There's so many ways to be creative. I believe we're clued in pretty well with to be healthy, mind and body, and live optimally and have a great quality of life. We know we need good nutrition. We know we need great sleep. We know we need good exercise. And I think creativity should be one of those pillars. I believe we need to express creativity just like we need exercise. Psychologically, Matt, it enlivens people in ways that I can't even describe. I'm, of course, speaking from my personal experience as well. Much like think back to the 1940s and 50s, people didn't really exercise. There weren't really gyms like weights. Like, what are you doing there? Like
jogging.
Yeah, people weren't even jogging. We look at that and like, whoa, they were missing out. I think in 50 years, we're going to look at how society as a whole, people present day, they're not having an active creative outlet in their life every day. I think we're going to laugh at that and realize like, man, we're way underdeveloped. And like, how did people survive without proactively being creative? So in my creative outlet personally is comedy. And I just think it's such an untapped resource. It's a faculty of ours. And just like all of our other faculties, if we don't use it, I don't know if we lose it, but it diminishes and we tend to suffer the consequences if we don't use it. Just like if we don't sleep, if we don't exercise, if we don't eat good nutrition.
Or don't use your brain. Yeah. Like as you get older, you need to keep your brain on point. So no, that's a huge problem, I think, in my little nutrition world is I put in some comedy in my Game Changers Debunked film and people freaked out. They're like, this is so stupid, or, everyone has their own opinion. And I'm just like, some people need to not be so serious all the time. Maybe the nutrition world isn't the time and place for comedy, but I think your points are very valid that we need to laugh. We need to be creative. And that I was just thinking about those films you watch or documentaries or whatever about the tribes. You go back to our roots and you see them around the campfire. They're laughing. There's a big component of humor throughout history. It is this universal thing. And maybe that's what these blue zones, these people live long, is they're connecting with people, right? That's the big thing they have in common is they're all have this sense of connection and purpose. And I think there's that creative laughing, just expressing themselves. I mean, you've seen these films, these people are around, what else are they going to do? I jump back to hunter-gatherer type people. They're around the fire for 4 hours a night, right? The sun goes down. They only sleep for 8 hours. There's another maybe 4 hours. What are they doing? They're telling jokes. They're dancing. They're just laughing.
Absolutely. And I, to your point, I love looking at the blue zone studies, and you find like different parts of the world, some of their diets are different, but what do they have in common? Low stress, and they're happy. By default, when we have low stress, we're naturally playful. It's in our nature. Not necessarily like I'm playful 24/7. Like if you're hunting a deer, you're probably not playful. You're you're task oriented. So when we're not expressing playfulness, we have to say like, what are we unnaturally doing to constipate this? And we find like, oh, stress, that's what's constricting the sphincter of our playfulness. So when you see in the blue zones, like these people, they're living over 100 years old, what they have in common is a low stress life, which means by default, they're going to be more playful. They're going to be more humorous. They have sensation of stress ain't worth living for. It just degrades their quality of life. We need it, but we don't need it chronically all the time. Yet the sensation of playfulness, joy, connection that comes with it, Jesus, that's the sensation worth living for sure.
It is. I actually got into this little sketch comedy world for a brief few months before I started making the film. And that's what got me back into the film world. So I kind of went on this path because of comedy. And maybe I can get back into it a little bit. I don't think anyone thinks I'm funny, except for.
Well, actually, I literally just naturally laughed at that when you said that. I think that's laughable.
This one girl thought I think I'm funny in text form. I wrote an email to this girl, had me on her podcast, and it was a pretty funny email. And she responded, "Wow, pretty funny for an engineer." Like I'm a mechanical engineer. I don't think we're known to be funny at all, but I'm going to get back into it. I love it. What's your mission? What's your mission statement?
Yeah, my mission statement is to touch and inspire the world by being outrageously playful.
I like that. Did that change? It used to be about conscious comedy.
Yeah, so it used to be to help people grow, heal, and awaken through conscious comedy. Mm-hmm. And the mission statement is still on the same trajectory. It's just I rewrote it in a way that feels like it has more juice in it for me. The purpose of my life is be outrageously playful to touch and inspire the world around me. There's just more aliveness, but it's really saying the same thing as the old mission statement of help people grow, heal, and awaken through conscious comedy.
I love it. I'm going to try to get a little bit on that path with some of this. And I wanted to get some of that in the film, but not in the main film, and put it in the credits. So I want to let you watch the film when it's done this summer, hopefully, and see if you can insert some conscious comedy in there and not make fun of people. I'm looking forward to it. And obviously, certainly looking forward to seeing the beautiful art creation of the film you're putting together that I think is going to really help people live better lives, and certainly looking forward to seeing how I can comedically contribute to it and in a small way to support some great points and maybe poke holes and egotistical ways of thinking at it. I love it. All right. Well, I guess what's our takeaway message here is nutrition dogma is stupid.
Well, I think we want to be more dogmatic and angry is the takeaway message.
I think I misunderstood you this whole time. So nutrition dogma, be nice to people.
Yes, for me, I'd summarize that with the word connection. If a way of living, eating, a philosophy, how you approach a philosophy, if it leaves you more connected with people, it's probably working for you. If it leaves you more disconnected, it's either a shitty philosophy or you're approaching the philosophy in a shitty way. So I think connection, unity is great. When we can have a field of acceptance around us, not agreement, disagreement, because we know like division in the body, that now we're screwed. We know division anywhere eventually leads to disease, whether it's societal, global. When things are circulating through connection and communion, I think we're on the right track.
All right. You said it. Let's do it. Where can people find you?
Right now I'm in my home office. So if people want to creep through my bushes or just look through the front window, this is where I'm at. And if you're not like of the stalker breed, all my social medias are Awaken with JP. I put out weekly YouTube videos, comedy videos, many of them largely in the health, fitness, nutrition genre. And so I'm on all the places, and my website is awakenwithjp.com.
I love it. And you're huge, by the way. I feel like your legs are like as big as my body. I need to figure out. I'm a skinny-legged man. I think I neglected my legs my whole life, and now I'm just feel like an idiot.
You were perhaps a deer in a past life, Brian. I'm getting that intuitive impression, and the skinny deer-like genes are maybe still in your Akashic record. All right. I need to work on that. Check out his YouTube. You got like millions of people on your Facebook and YouTube. It's crazy. So congratulations. And if people listening haven't heard of JP, you're an idiot. And go find him and be connected. And thank you. Yay. You're awesome, Brian. Look forward to chatting soon, brother. Okay, see ya. There it is, everyone. Please go to sapien.org to find out everything we're doing and sign up for the newsletter where you can get updates on all the new stuff that will be coming out soon. Share the podcast with a friend, rate it on iTunes, get the nose to tail meat, go cook yourself some great food, do a home workout, smile, be happy, talk to a friend, and come back next week.